And welcome back. As we go ahead and continue looking at how to use classes, let's kind of wrap things up here with looking at an example of how to build our own constructors. So I've brought back our person class that we have kind of been playing around with. And what I'm going to go ahead and do here is add in some constructors. If you look right now, we have, of course, some overloaded methods that already exist. For example, you can see we have different methods here that are very unique. So we have like set age, set eye color example. But I could, of course, overload these. I could make these all, for example, set person, and they would all be overloaded. It wouldn't be very hard for me to go ahead and do that. So, for example, let's just say we're going to copy set person here, and I'm going to go ahead and make it so that way it overrides eye color. It's a very easy way for us to do that. However, sometimes we want maybe our accessor mutators to keep those unique names. But where we are going to see that overloading is definitely going to be in our constructor. So let's go ahead and do that. If we think about our constructors, how do we actually put these in our code? Well, remember, they're always going to be public, and they don't have a return type, so we can just skip right to what type they are. In this case, what are they? Well, if you think about what we have here, we have a person class, so we have to, of course, have a person object, and we have to decide how many parameters. And it's always a good idea to start with a no arg constructor here, because that is going to handle those cases when you have those things defined. Because if we start putting defined constructors in here and we don't have no arg constructor, it's going to cause issues. And remember, you don't necessarily have to have parameters and variables and everything all defined for your no arg constructor. It could be just this, and that could be your no arg constructor. That could be enough. However, I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit more here. So I'm just going to say this is our no arg constructor. And so if I think no arg is like the default constructor, right? What do we want to initialize these values to? Well, I can very easily here come and say name is just a empty string, age is equal to 0, and let's say eye color is an empty string as well. And that's that simple. We don't have to necessarily set them to a specific value because we may want those values to be obtained later. All right. So when we're initializing this object, we just wanted to have some placeholder values. And so a lot of times we could do things like an empty string. We could do 0. You could even make your strings null. I usually just put an empty string in here just because it's a little bit nicer to work with, because then I don't have to worry about have issues with things being null. Let's go ahead though and make a couple other constructors. So again, we're going to do public person. And now we want to parameterize our constructors. So let's start thinking about what are those values that we can pass in. Well, if we look, we have a name, age, and eye color. So let's just say we're going to pass in a name, and let's say an age. And then what we can do is effectively almost treat this the same as we would with our set methods. So we can say in here, for example, name is equal to person name, and age is equal to person age. Now, you'll notice, though, that doesn't do anything for eye color. At this point, you have two options. You can, of course, try to leave this alone and say, I don't care about what this variable is doing. Or you could, of course, go ahead and just say, you know what, I'm just going to go ahead and set it still to an initial value. So I'm just going to go ahead and make it an empty string again because remember this is string type. So that is, of course, something you can do. And I do recommend initializing it to something unless there's a case not to, just because then it's not going to potentially come back as some sort of error where it's like it doesn't have a value. Now let's add another parameterized constructor in here this time. Let's do one now that's going to take in every parameter. So let's do string. I'll do person name again because remember it is a new method, so I can reuse these variables because these variable names are local to the method we're creating. And we need one more for string, and we'll call this one, since it was eye color, let's just call this one eyes. Okay, and then I'm going to make my life easier. I'm just going to copy and paste this, and I'm just going to replace eye color with eyes. And that's a very easy way for us to do this. Now, what if we wanted to have a constructor that only takes in one parameter? How does that look? Well, I like doing these in kind of order from least to most number of parameters. So I'm just going to add in one here. So let's just say public person, and let's just take in only their name. So person name. what does that mean? Well, we know that that means name is still going to equal person name, so I'm just going to copy that, bring it in. But what about the age and eye color? Again, you can initialize these two values, and you don't have to make them, for example, 0 and an empty string. I could very easily come here and say, you know what? I want it to be, when they initialize, I want the age to be 1. And that would be perfectly valid too, because you say, you know what? Maybe they're 1 because they're already existing. All right, or you can make it 100. It doesn't matter as long as it's a valid entry that you think would apply here. Again, I like setting these to like 0 and an empty string because it just is a nice value for me to start with. Now from here, it wouldn't be very hard to go ahead and change these values. So for example, let's go ahead and create a person object here. So let's just say person, let's just say a person is equal to a new person object. And that's something we're very familiar with. Now, if I go ahead and call a system.out.println of a person, well, that's going to use our toString method here. And our toString method currently, if you look at what it does, it's going to print out the name, age, and eye color. So let's go ahead and just run this as is. And we get the name of the person is, their age is 0, and their eye color is this. Notice there's nothing printed out because remember, what did we initialize these values to? These values are initialized to an empty string, 0, and an empty string. Now, if I take out this no_r constructor, we talked about this, but if I just take this out, you notice I get an error right away because it says it is undefined. And that's because we have these parameterized constructors in here now. And once I put that back in, we have no errors. But if I were to go ahead and take out all of my constructors here, and notice we don't have an error because Java is going to assume that it's going to do something. And notice here, the difference that happens is that we have null, 0, and null. Because the way Java will treat these is that it's going to treat them as, because they're strings, and strings are objects, it's going to initialize them as null. So there is an advantage to being able to do that because it allows you to have something that doesn't come back as null. Because a user may not know, why is it saying null? But if they say, okay, it's empty, that means, okay, maybe I need to set some value in here. So we, of course, can spit this out. And let's just go ahead then and say a person dot read input. All right. Now this, of course, should allow us to put new values in here. So let's just go ahead and run that. So let's enter name and age. All right. So I'll just say Billy. How about 16? All right. So we get the name of the person is Billy, and their age is 16, and their eye color is blank. Notice it did not set the eye color because if we look at our read input method currently, it doesn't do anything for eye color. It only asks for our name and age. So if we wanted to do something for eye color, we might have to set that value. Or we just have it blank. So let's just go ahead and do now a set call. So let's just do a person dot set, and we can do eye color. And let's just go ahead and pass in the color, let's say brown. And now if we go ahead and run it, we'll do again Billy. Let's say they're 16. The name of the person is Billy, and their age is 16, and their eye color is brown. So a very easy way for us to use constructors here, but let's just go ahead and show this with one more constructor here in use. So let's do another person, and we're going to set this to a new person, but this time let's go ahead and set it to a parameterized version. So let's make this Susie, and we'll make her, how about she is 15, and her eye color is, let's say, green. So now if we run it, so we're going to do Billy, 16. All right, the name of the person is Billy, age is 16, eye color is brown. Let's go ahead and actually add in a system.out statement here because I forgot to add one for Susie. And so just do another person. Go ahead and rerun it one more time. Billy, 16. We get the name of the person is Billy, their age is 16, and their eye color is brown. The name of the person is Susie, their age is 15, and their eye color is green. So a great demonstration of how those overloaded methods are created here inside of our class, but also a great way to show how you actually use them in your driver programs as well.